2 years later, however, in 1949, another alien is reported to have survived a saucer crash, and this being, known as EBE-1, was taken into custody and kept at a safe house. EBE-1 supposedly suffered from chronic health problems, which the doctors of the time were helpless to treat. According to a controversial, possibly fraudulent briefing document dating from the Jimmy Carter administration, EBE-1 was interviewed by means of pictographs, from which it was learned that he came from the Zeta Reticuli star system.
Can we eliminate one or more of these categories from discussion?
The laborious process of developing a set of symbols that could be used and understood by both human and alien amounted to the creation of a new language. If such an effort was made, it represents the greatest achievement in linguistics since the deciphering of the Rosetta Stone. That such an achievement would be kept secret illustrates the hysterical paranoia of the time as the Cold War intensified under the threat of nuclear annihilation. The so-called Carter-Aquarius briefing document states that EBE-1 died of unknown causes on June 18, 1952. Skeptics who doubt the authenticity of the Carter-Aquarius document find it unbelievable that highly advanced alien beings would allow one of their own to die under the primitive medical care of a species that had barely begun to conquer its own diseases. But as we will hear, there are those who claim that to the aliens, death is not a final end to be feared, but a mere transition.
It was in the late 40s and early 50s that the U.S. government's policy toward UFOs was formulated. Publicly, there was Project Blue Book, which made a great show of gathering data on all the major UFO sightings, finally declaring them all to be hoaxes, mass hysteria, or swamp gas. But secretly, there may have been another policy at work. Over the years, several documents have come to light which seemingly confirm that a clandestine group, Operation Majestic 12 Group, aka MJ-12, was formed by special classified presidential order on September 24, 1947, for the express purpose of gathering information on UFOs and extraterrestrials, while at the same time keeping such information not only from unfriendly powers, but from the American public as well. If indeed Area 51 has become the nation's repository for alien technology and possibly alien visitors, then the extra-constitutional justifications for such secrecy were developed in the MJ-12 Group's planning sessions. James B. Forrestal, Secretary of Defense under President Harry Truman, is widely accused of being the mastermind behind the creation of MJ-12. Once created, Majestic may have expanded its mandate beyond what Forrestal had intended. Whatever secrets Forrestal may have known concerning flying saucers and alien visitors, that knowledge died with him when in 1949 he mysteriously plunged to his death from a window at Bethesda Naval Hospital. Though he was being treated for depression, many UFO researchers doubt that his death was a suicide and point to the sinister workings of the possibly mythical MJ-12, which in their hypothesis may have been protecting its secrecy from a man who had come to believe the people had a right to know. As late as 1989, according to Bob Lazar, the identification badges at Area 51 read MADGE for Majestic. In December 1994, a document purporting to be the Majestic 12 Group Special Operations Manual was leaked to a noted UFO researcher. It contains the following directive under the heading Isolation and Custody. EBEs will be detained by whatever means are necessary and removed to a secure location as soon as possible. There follows this disturbing amplification. Although it is preferable to maintain the physical well-being of any entity, the loss of EBE life is considered acceptable if conditions or delays to preserve that life in any way compromise the security of the operations. From the beginning of the UFO age, it seems, secrecy was always the government's prime directive.
In 1988, another anonymous government source, codenamed Falcon, claimed that a second extraterrestrial biological entity, EBE-2, voluntarily became a guest of our government, allowing himself to be examined and interviewed. In this scenario, Area 51 became, for a time at least, a sort of extraterrestrial embassy, the setting for mankind's first attempt at diplomacy with beings from another world. Different sources disagree as to how communication was established. There is universal agreement that the EBEs are incapable or unwilling to speak human language. In addition to the pictographs used by EBE-1, it has been reported by Falcon that in the early 1950s, EBE-2 was fitted with some sort of artificial voice box, allowing him to speak words, and that he learned the English language very rapidly. Other sources doubt this story, however.
By our kind, do you mean we Americans?
What has been reported most persistently is that the aliens communicate via thought projection, or telepathy.
They would have been tortured, made to give up their secrets, instead of questioned in this friendly manner.
We cannot be forced to communicate.
Has it been tried? Not by us.
We speak to who's ever willing to listen.
The idea of telepathic communication with alien beings carries with it the same doubts and controversy attached to telepathy itself. Do the practitioners of this ancient art really have the ability to read minds? Or are they crafty charlatans who simply tell the listener what he or she wants to hear? If the cynics are right, then the self-proclaimed telepaths recruited by the government in the 1950s were playing an astoundingly daring hoax by claiming to speak for the mute visitors from the stars. Defenders of telepathy call this notion preposterous and point to the long history of government-funded research into mind reading as proof that their science has merit. In the last 4 decades, there have been persistent, often contradictory rumors and even eyewitness accounts of other alien visitors meeting secretly with military or government officials. But what about today? The Tester Corporation has recently come out with a model kit of Gray, the extraterrestrial life form, and a scale model of the so-called sport model, the UFO Bob Lazar says he studied at Area 51. This UFO kit has quickly become one of the most successful model kits in the history of the company. If the military is, in fact, conducting tests of extraterrestrial spacecraft at Area 51, then where are the alien creators of these craft?
In his first TV appearance under the pseudonym Dennis, Bob Lazar was asked if there are living aliens at Area 51. Clearly nervous, he evaded the question by saying, quote, "I really want to steer away from that right now," unquote. In subsequent interviews, however, he admitted catching a glimpse of 2 scientists talking to a strange short figure with long arms. He also reported seeing several documents that seemed to contain first-hand information on alien civilizations.
Lazar is skeptical of a claim made by Falcon that a group of EBEs have been given complete control of a separate base within Dreamland. But he does admit having read a report of a tragic misunderstanding between military personnel and alien beings in the late 70s. Lazar states that it had to do with bullets the MPs were carrying, and that the bullets might explode, possibly due to a field the aliens had generated in that area. This encounter supposedly resulted in the deaths of all the humans involved by head wounds.
But if there was ever a large-scale alien presence at Area 51, Lazar saw no evidence of it doing his work at S4 in the late 80s. Is it possible that the deadly misunderstanding of 10 years earlier brought human-alien cooperation to an end?
In his September 21, 1987 speech to the UN General Assembly, President Reagan himself did little to dispel the notion that this deadly misunderstanding brought human-alien cooperation to an end.
In our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Are the inconsistencies between various tales coming out of Area 51 evidence that these stories are lies? Or are the discrepancies the result of an intentional campaign of disinformation designed to discredit any elements of truth that may be reaching the public?
If so, how does Victor fit into the jigsaw puzzle of questionable witnesses to the alien presence at Area 51? Is he a hoaxer, a government dupe, or a frightened whistleblower with the hard evidence to back up his story?
I made it very clear to Victor that his credibility was the entire issue here, and that everybody's going to think this is a hoax, and that how are they going to possibly verify this? What he said was, you can do anything you want in terms of verified, any type of due diligence. He will answer whatever questions put forward. We could do whatever type of checking. We could bring in experts. We could have the tape tested. We could, in fact, he encouraged all of these aspects. He just did not want his face and his real name revealed.
At Coleman's insistence, Victor agreed reluctantly to appear on camera, but only in disguise, in shadow, and with his voice electronically altered. The questions were agreed upon in advance, but during the actual interview, the discussion occasionally deviated from Victor's approved questions.
What is your occupation at Area 51?
I won't answer that. I have had reason to be present at Area 51, but I'm not going to clarify whether or not I was there as an employee.
Are you saying you were there as a visitor?
I'm not going to specify why or in what capacity I was there, only that I was there.
Can you tell us how many times you were there?
When I agreed to this, my fundamental ground rule was that I would not be asked to divulge personal data that might help pinpoint my identity. If you continue to ask questions that are out of bounds, I won't hesitate to terminate this interview.
Are you saying that the number of times you were present at Area 51 is enough to pinpoint your identity?
Any specifics will narrow the field of suspects. Of course, I could lie. Let's say I've been there 47 times, or anyway more than once.
Let's turn to the tape itself. The copy you've supplied is not the original tape.
No.
Was the original at Area 51 when you copied it?
That's out of bounds.
Is it fair to assume that the copying of tapes at Area 51 is heavily restricted?
You can assume anything you like. I would say that's a fair assumption. That's obvious. I will say that this tape was copied under special circumstances. Otherwise, copying it would have been impossible.
Can you be more specific?
More specific? Okay, I'm sure they've figured this much out already. Recently, there was a wholesale transfer of video documentation from analog tape to digital disc storage. In a couple of instances, this allowed data to leak from a highest security system to a less high security system. Even so, this particular tape was the only... I think that's about all I'll say about that.
Was there something about this particular clip that made it more accessible to be copied?
Not necessarily, no.
Was there something about the content that caused them to file it differently or give it special handling?
This interview was terminated.
The interview resumed only after a discussion of the ground rules.
Have you personally seen the alien being that appears in the tape?
Yes, I have, but I stress I was not necessarily present at the interview session that appears on the tape. I'm not going to be specific. I may have encountered the being at another time.
What can you tell us about the alien interview we're about to see?
This one is rather recent, very late in the series. The interview process has been ongoing since the being arrived, which was in 1989. Approximately twice a month, they sit it down for a session that generally lasts from 3 to 5 hours. If they try to go longer than that, or if they schedule the sessions more frequently, the being becomes unresponsive. There's a fair amount of infighting among the scientists from different disciplines to get their questions asked.
What has the alien revealed?
Various minor technical details of the saucers. The physicists and engineers are frankly frustrated. They feel the being is withholding information. Possibly concepts are getting lost because all the information has to come through a telepath. But also it may be that the bulk of their scientific knowledge is just too advanced to be translated into our primitive conceptual framework. It's analogous to if a human scientist were to try to translate quantum mechanics into the grunts and screeches of a chimpanzee.
That's not a very flattering comparison.
Frankly, there's a high attrition rate for scientists in the program. You'd think they'd be energized by the challenge. But a lot of them take the ego deflation very hard when they find out not only how much they don't know, but how much they aren't even capable of understanding.
What else has the alien communicated?
Oddly enough, the being seems to have a much easier time communicating spiritual concepts.
The human body is a vehicle, a vessel. And the vessel must be maintained to serve the spirit with maximum efficiency. But a broken vessel can be replaced. The human spirit, or the soul, can have many vessels.
Is the process natural or technological?
Both are one. Technology is a natural excrescence of humanity. Technology is a process the vessel uses to perfect itself.
So this transference of the soul from vessel to vessel, did your kind create the mechanics of it, or is it a natural... Did it predate the intellectual creation?
Before understanding must come acceptance.
It is not technological.
Well, I think what he's trying to say is that the question is meaningless. The soul can travel from vessel to vessel. Reincarnation, transfiguration, whatever. It's real.
What I'm getting at is, does he know how it's done?
Victor uses the term vessels to refer to the alien's conception of the body as a disposable vehicle for the soul. The UFO cult known as Heaven's Gate used the term containers in a similar context. The mass suicide of the Heaven's Gate cultists illustrates the dark side of accepting such ideas at face value.